Right, good afternoon. For those of you in the South African time zone, good morning if you're in a more easterly time zone, or westerly rather, and good evening if you're in a more easterly time zone. Thank you for joining us for our ProThink webinar. This specific one is going to be around continuous improvement. And you might now be wondering, what am I doing in this webinar with a cruise liner as the landing page when I enter? Well, we are using the analogy of sailing in terms of how business has evolved. It's no longer about having a concrete foundation that's solid and immovable, but rather it's about adapting to waves of change, so to speak, that come our way. And so we have the analogy of sailing. And we've got a cruise liner because a yacht is too small. We have about 300 registrants for this webinar, panel discussion, and so we had to charter a very nice large ship to accommodate everybody. So with that as the background, let's just all settle in and get comfortable. Please join us up on deck. Grab a beverage of your choice. Again, depending on your time zone, you may want a different beverage. Maybe some of you need a bit of coffee to get some your brains working, or maybe you like water or some orange juice or even a bit of champagne if you like. We are going to be pondering things, and so maybe having some champagne will help us ponder. This webinar is brought to you by ProThink NXT. And we are a company that's about creating abundance and making business work better. And we do that by deploying our different practices. And on the left there, you see the different practices that we have. We've got a blockchain, compliance, process and strategy, change and project management, automation, and data. And today's webinar is being brought to you out of our process and strategy practice. And that's enough from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Michelle to take things a bit further.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for that intro, Vincent. So today's discussion is about the forgetting curve. And we've got, we'll talk in a little bit about what is the forgetting curve. But I'd like to introduce you to our panelists. Firstly, our guest speaker is Andrew Lenti, who is the General Manager and Co-founder at Top Tactical Intelligence of London. And Top TII is the maker of the Presto continuous improvement and business process optimization software as a service. It's a pretty neat software that manages pretty much all elements related to continuous improvement. Andrew has a background in Lean Six Sigma and has deep experience in continuous improvement, having spent a number of years as head of CI at State Street Corp, which is a bank in Italy. Then next we have MJ. MJ Fick is my business partner, one of the partners in the business. And she is our PMO director for the group. And her passion is in the field of project, program, and portfolio management, as well as project management office managing and setup and health checks. Obviously combined with a strong dose of change management. And she believes in continual improvement and learning for life. Vincent, who you've already met a little bit, is ProThink NXT's Chief Operating Officer and holds a BCom in accounting, a black belt in Six Sigma, and a range of certifications in things that how to make a business work faster, better, and easier. And he has nearly 2 decades of, he has already 2 decades of operational experience, including at the C-level and director level. And his CV reads quite well in that he's also worked with very multi-million-dollar businesses to build them up and do what is needed to make them work. Then on the next page, I am the CEO of ProThink NXT and one of the co-founders. We've been in business for 20 years. And what I love doing every day is process. And process and continuous improvement are really tied in together. Moira is our marketing coordinator, and along with Abby, who's our community manager, they're the quiet people behind the scenes that's making this event possible. And with that, let's get started into the discussion. I just need to open up something here quickly.
So maybe do the poll quickly, Michelle.
Let me, yeah, before we do this poll, I just want to really especially thank everybody for their great response, for being part of this team, or for being part of this discussion. And the way we'll run it is basically we've got, when we invited you, we had four questions that we are going, or items that we're going to address. So we're going to get to those. But do invite you to add your questions to the chat list, and we'll get back to those after the initial questions have been responded to. So let's just take a bit of a dipstick and do a poll on where you are at with regards to continuous improvement. So the question is, how do you manage continuous improvement in your company? And please choose one of those four options.
And responses are coming in.
I'm not sure if everybody can see the responses. I'm seeing them.
Yeah, so we've got about 60%, close to 80%. Yeah, so I think we can take it as everyone submitted.
Possible to share the results on the screen?
Yeah, certainly. Just need to share my screen here. And there we go. So there's the results. 12% say it happens when it happens. 36% we encourage ideas but don't formally.
We don't see it. I don't think it's showing.
You see you see the slide that says poll.
Okay. Aha, share results.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that means there's a tie between we encourage ideas but don't formally select and implement, and we have a formal process with a dashboard view of opportunities. Okay, great. Thanks for that, everyone. So what is the forgetting curve? When we started talking about this, I always love to see what is the story behind the story. The forgetting curve is actually information lost over time without an attempt to retain information. This was apparently a person by the name of Hermann Ebbinghaus, who lived in the period 1815 to 1909, was a German psychologist, and he founded the experimental psychology of memory. And so in recognition of his work, the forgetting curve was then coined as a phrase. And basically what it says is that, and if you look at my LinkedIn post tomorrow, there's more about that on the post tomorrow. But we basically lose a good 75% of what we hear within the first few minutes of hearing it. Within 20 minutes, 58% of what we heard is left. And so you carry on so that after 6 days, you've basically retained 25% of what, for instance, you hear today. And the point is that it actually applies to businesses as well. And we are going to chat about that today, and specifically I would like to start asking the question to the panel then. What it is, we've pretty much said what it is now. Why does it pose a risk? We know for people, but why does it pose a risk for companies? Andrew, can we start with you?
Andrew, if you maybe just unmute yourself, please.
Hi, thanks, Michelle. Great topic. This is a topic that I hold very close to my heart because I'm in the field of IT. And I would like to share a slide right now, a couple slides. I like to highlight this woman. She just wrote this book a few years ago, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up. And this is a book that speaks to anybody about organizing your life by keeping a tidy mind. To keep a tidy mind, you got to keep a tidy operation. And as a individual, tidy operation means keeping your house in order. And in doing so, she's done a lot of research to prove that having your house in order makes your memory much more effective. Going back to Michelle's introduction about Hermann Ebbinghaus, yes, the forgetting curve is very real. I think most people will agree, especially in a work environment where passion isn't always there, but your memory is very necessary to perform well. Looking at your performance standards and your results over the course of time, as you're absorbing information, if you don't actually put it to good use, and you're not accessing it on a daily basis, you lose it very quickly. How many times have you been to some type of training seminar and coming out of that seminar, you remember very little. And a couple of months after that, you don't even remember what the title of the topic was. So the way out of this, especially if that information is critical to survive, critical to do your job, the way out of this is repetition and constant access to the information that allows you to leverage the memory that you have. And you can see on that slide on the right, the more you repeat something, the more it becomes ingrained as a process in yourself, as a person and as a performer.
Andrew, can I interrupt you there? So that's great. So I get into my job and I'm new in my job and I start learning and I repeat, and as I master things, I get better at it, and now I'm becoming the expert, maybe after months, maybe after 2 years, and suddenly I get a promotion and the next person comes in and has to struggle again. So how do we make sure that I mastered the forgetting curve by learning hard and working hard and mastering it, and now this poor new person need to start all over again. So how can I hand over to that person to make sure that we capitalize on my mastery of the forgetting curve?
Yeah, that's a great question, MJ. We live in amazing times at the moment. I've always had a really bad memory, and because of that, anybody that I've ever worked with knows me as the person that really captured information and made it available. I always had huge binders, very well organized, to be able to go down to the nth level of detail to do something. And now that we're in this amazing period of digital transformation, we have a bunch of new opportunities, a bunch of new tools to be able to capture these things and make knowledge, make know-how available and transparent to the whole entire organization in a way that allows you to access that information without even needing to disturb the people that actually created or captured the information in the first place. And we're speaking about digital transformation. We're speaking about capturing know-how and in the cloud and giving it back to a group of people using a standard user-friendly interface.
Vincent, have you got any comments on what is your experience around the forgetting curve and why specifically it poses a risk?
Well, I think I must maybe first highlight something. If there's any academics in the audience, they might point out to you that Hermann Ebbinghaus's dated sample was all of one person. It was just himself. But subsequently, a number of social psychologists or sociologists have gone and repeated his experiments on larger data sets. So it has been proven that there is this significant drop off of information. So yeah, I mean, for me, it's we have all this institutional knowledge, and how do we ensure that when a new person comes on board, that they retain that information? Because I'm sure you've all experienced coming to a company for the first time. There's a deluge of information that gets chucked on you. And the only way that you're going to make sure that all that corporate information is transferred, that knowledge is transferred, is through repetition. And so in terms of continuous improvement, you need to have a program in your induction process where you are continuously reinforcing that initial data dump that was given to the person that started. So that's a checkbox. Do I have a process where I repeat my induction for staff?
Thanks, Vincent. And it's going to lead me to the next question. And this is where we look at, well, that is a problem, and it does have risks to it. How does one ensure the management through continuous improvement of corporate knowledge staying and not being reinvented time and time again? Andrew, I think this is where Presto is a good example of automating and managing it.
Yeah, thanks for that. I'll share my screen again, if you don't mind. And I'll go back to another quote. And once again, there's our friend Steve Jobs talking about some of the best innovation he's ever come up with has just come from the idea of reorganizing your company. And based on that, I want to introduce to you a client of ours based in the US, a health services agency with up to 500 employees, servicing 8,000 patients a year. We've been working with them now for almost 3 years, working on continuous improvement. And one of the key things that challenges that we were given from the beginning of our relationship is knowledge sharing and corporate awareness. So what I'll share with you here, we have a 5-step checklist in any company to be able to get knowledge in the hands of the right people and allow them to be able to access it without disturbing the actual process owners. So looking at our checklist, there's 5 simple steps, and I invite you to reflect on how well your company takes forward these 5 steps. Most companies are trying to do all of these things, but not everybody is doing it effectively. Step number 1, going back to Steve Jobs' organizational operating model focus, we're talking about keeping your company in a way so that you understand the company's functions and the company's roles. When you know what the company is supposed to be doing and the roles that are supposed to be carrying them out, you immediately know where to go when you need information, when you need to send somebody to get something. Step number 2 is then going one step further, zooming into each of those functions or teams, you may want to call them, and understand what are those processes that clients are paying us for, processes that allow you to carry out value in your value chain and deliver it to your stakeholders. Step number 3, now that you're working at the process level, comes to how do I keep that process as standard as possible and put people in a position to start identifying process optimization opportunities. And here we're speaking about strong controls or strong checklists. This is the number 1 place I like to start if I'm working with new employees or new someone new to a role that's trying to learn a new job. Give them their process checklist so they can start understanding these are the controls that are put in place that make sure that this process is functioning well. Step number 4 is assuring that everybody in the organization understands the accountability matrix at each level of your process and at each level of your checklist, understanding who's responsible for something, who's accountable for something, and anybody else that needs to be in the periphery of any type of activity as in either a consulting role or a potential observer type role. And we do this using the famous RACI matrix. And step number 5, all of this, as you can imagine, especially if you're working in the services industry, comes to capturing this information and keeping it documented. So keeping these 5 steps in mind as you're structuring your company, you're structuring your operating model. Step number 1, you're putting together an organizational chart that speaks to the company and lining those roles up. In the minute you get this transparent and visible to the organization, people are then in a position to raise their hand and say, this role doesn't seem to match. Shall we challenge this? And at this point in time, at least people know where to go, who to go to, and how to navigate themselves up and down, left and right through the organization. Here's
Andrew, could I just interrupt you there? I see Vincent's got his hand up.
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to highlight, support what Andrew's saying there. Particularly what stood out for me is step 4 of assigning responsibility on every process. In terms of that forgetting curve, when I come into an organization, if it's easy for me to say I'm an accountant, come into the business, I'm an accountant, to then ask the question of this repository of information, what does an accountant do, and get all of the processes that me as an accountant is responsible for. It would be an amazing way of ensuring I don't forget that initial induction. So just wanted to support that.
Thanks, Vincent.
Good point.
Andrew, I think just to also interrupt you a little bit and to deviate, I see Larry posted a comment to say in today's organization, there's no longer the situation of one role, one person. Every person potentially fulfill multiple roles. Maybe just elaborate on how step 1 takes care of that.
Yeah, so starting from the top where you're putting structure, you're putting an architecture into your company, you start aligning the roles, and at this point in time, people start feeling attached to their roles. But that step number 1 marries very well with step number 4, because that step number 4 is an opportunity to make your company very flexible or even agile, for the lack of a better description. And in this case here, you're talking about the fact it's possible that, yes, underneath the tree, the organogram of a company, it's possible you report directly to a certain person, to a certain role. But that RACI matrix allows you to take your know-how and share it across the company when necessary. As an example, imagine that you've had some experience working in a department, on a team, for a good amount of time, and you've become known as a champion or a process expert, and then you change roles, you move divisions, you may even move locations, countries, but you're known in the company as somebody, as a process expert on a certain topic. Even if you're not still there, as long as the company knows you have that know-how, the moment there some change comes towards that process, some high-profile project, some type of transformational opportunity where the brains of the company need to get together, you are now in a position to say, okay, although I work on this team, although I report to a certain person, to a certain role, using that RACI matrix, you can now cross-departmentally agree between the decision makers in the company that this person, this expert, should now be a consulted party or an informed party on this transversal initiative that's taking place, even if it doesn't have a direct impact on the reporting line or the immediate stakeholders. And that's where you get to start sharing the know-how across the company and letting people know in the company who knows how to do what.
If I can just also emphasize the RACI matrix there, Andrew, and the power of that. So RACI being responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. You're then able to, even though people move on in the organization, they can remain consulted on a process because they are process experts. So as this accountant that started, I know I'm responsible for compiling the management accounts, and I don't know how the company I'm working for compiles their management accounts. If I have a RACI matrix, I can go see who I should consult to be able to do the right thing. And then I don't have to disturb the wrong people. I don't have to go to my manager and say, listen, what am I supposed to be doing here? Or my colleague. Meanwhile, there is a matrix telling me who's the expert on the process.
Yep. In those consultant parties, even if they start, the further away they get from that actual reality, staying a consultant party, especially if it's officially identified, they get to stay in touch with their old world every now and then, keeping them in touch with their company and above all their company strategy.
I'm wondering if this is a good point. You have a slide, Andrew, with that shows the dashboard on Presto, which makes all of what you've just said very clear, indicating who does what on which process.
Yeah.
So maybe that's just good for the audience to have a look-see of how easy it is then to see who is responsible for what, and how the knowledge is then captured through the processes that's allocated.
Sure. So walking through these 5 steps, there's your functions, there's your teams, all boxed up in the same common language that the whole company understands. It's just showing some extra slides of my client actually doing it using our solution, Presto Continuous Improvement, putting their org chart together, aligning their roles to each box in the company, to each functional responsibility. Step number 2 is then taking those functional roles and assigning processes. There's your value chain, there's your processes assigned to each team, saying this is how this team is supporting the company. Here's our client cataloging their processes at the macro micro level. Now imagine yourself first day on the job, being assigned to this team over here immediately without disturbing anybody. You can start thumbing through all the catalog of processes, macro processes, micro processes, and you get to start getting a good understanding who knows how to do what, who's responsible for what. Taking that to the 3rd level, here we're speaking about the checklist, the controls. And now we're saying, okay, what does it mean to be able to carry out these processes? And above all, what do we have to watch out for so we don't shoot ourselves in the foot while we're delivering these processes to our stakeholders? And here you have your checklist, your process controls, where anybody that's responsible for a process sees step by step, this is what needs to be done. And in doing so, here's a checklist that Alvis is using in their staff hiring process. And taking that one step further, here you have your RACI matrix explained to the whole company. So they're all on board with understanding who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, and who's informed, and then lining that RACI matrix up at the step level. So to answer your question, there's your process steps or your process controls, and you see immediately a figurehead, a role. These are the people that are responsible for that. And in most processes, especially processes that have high visibility, there's a good portion of those steps that get done at the analyst level, at the go-getter level, administration level. Things are getting prepared, and when everything's finally done, as you can see in this example over here, the head of sales finally takes over and is responsible to present this monthly management report. And who's informed? Well, you got the CEO, the COO, the CIO, and the CAO. So here we're talking about presenting a report in a monthly management meeting. But of course, before the head of marketing, the CCO, before the CCO makes that presentation, you can see the whole team is engaged at various steps of the way. And at the beginning, most of that are process experts, analysts, and project managers. So step number 4 is where you get that visibility. And of course, to finalize this, here's an example of Alvis using their RACI matrix digitized on their process dashboard. And then to take this one step further, what are all the documents that are supporting that checklist, that process? And you can see multiple documents support single processes. You have procedures, you have job aids, you have process flow documents, and you have checklists. And as you start capturing those in your catalog, people that are looking for know-how, people that are looking to get caught up with the role that they're supposed to be carrying out can start accessing this archive of information once again without bothering the people that are actually doing the work at the moment. And in doing so, here's a screen print of Alvis, who's mapped all their documents on their process dashboard. So if you're interested in taking a look at the monthly reporting process, you know immediately that there's 6 documents out there that are critical for this process. And when you click on that, you get a nice looking screen like this telling you what documents they are, what format they're in, and most importantly, what status they're in. You can see immediately here from this little red guy that there's we need a partner brochure and it's missing. It hasn't been done yet. And you're giving visibility to your company on how to make your process better and where you have some pitfalls that could cause risk to the delivery on your value chain.
I want to pause just here for some questions. Vincent, have you got something to add?
Well, I actually would like to sum up what Andrew said by answering Larry's question. So maybe that's what you were about to do.
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So Larry's asking, he's saying this is an initial step, but how do you then change these processes? So it is exactly what Larry's saying. This is the initial step, is to understand your organization, understand the processes, assign them to people using the RACI matrix. You can't do continuous improvement if you don't know what your processes are and who's working in those processes in terms of the RACI matrix. So not just, I've got 10 people working on management accounts. Who is responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted, who's informed? Once you have that level of understanding, continuous improvement becomes a very easy thing to do. And I don't want to go too far down the road in terms of things that we may cover a bit later. But once you understand, I've got a monthly management reporting process. These are the people that are responsible and accountable and so on, the RACI matrix. How do I then let them tell me there's a problem in this process? Because then I can fix the problems and that will be my continuous improvement journey. So it's creating a culture where my staff can elevate what's not working and then make strategic decisions based on that input to continuously improve. But it starts with getting my processes and knowing who is working in those processes.
Annalisa is asking, what is the difference between responsible and accountable, and could it be the same person? Or is the accountable person actually the one that produces the data? How would you differentiate between those two roles?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll take that one. So this is where the RACI matrix really works its magic, because at the end of the day, you have a person doing the work. You have a person that's absolutely responsible to carry out the work. And for most of the time, whether the process is set up correctly or not, that person is more, for the lack of a better word, a soldier carrying out the process as they've been asked to. Of course, there's a person always above that person that's going to get in trouble if the responsible person does not carry it out correctly. So to make the difference between a responsible party and the accountable party, the responsible party is the person that's actually doing the work. The accountable party is the person that has his neck on the line in the event the responsible party is not doing a good job.
I suppose in a very small
business, it can be the same person, Annalisa. But different hats.
Yeah. Depending on the level of visibility, obviously, the level of risk that the step or the process has. Obviously, you may have multiple people as responsible parties with one accountable party.
Yeah. Vincent, back to you. Thanks, MJ.
Yeah, no, I was also just going to say exactly what MJ said. So.
Okay. Kevin says that this could be useful for the SLDC process too, and I think that's amongst others why MJ loves this conversation and working in Presto, is because it really helps you to manage things like project management should be.
In fact, Larry, to come back to, get your process in place and then you do continuous improvement. It's like when I do project management, and you create your initial plan, that becomes your baseline once it's signed off. And as you know, project plans change all the time, and you refine it. So your initial processes, whether they're perfect or not, just get them out and then start your continuous improvement process journey.
Yes, I think it was meant to be SDLC.
Yeah, all different industries have their own acronyms, so you never know.
That's true.
One
Yeah,
pops
that's
up.
true. Okay, I think the next point I'd like MJ to specifically address is what the cornerstones of successful continuous improvement are.
Michelle, I'll give you my informal view, and then Vincent and Andrew can maybe give you a more formal view. But for me is for a company to improve is listen to your people. They know what's wrong. They know what needs to improve. Show them that you value them, and then once you've improved, find a way to reward them, because that will encourage them to improve, to come up with better ideas, and other people will also do. And I'm not talking about monetary rewards. It can be just a pat on the back announcement, this person came up with a great idea and we reap the benefits. But let me tell you some personal stories, and this is what I mean. This is sitting and in a lot of people, especially in the corporate space, where they come up with ideas and they would sit in a team meeting, there's a problem, and they would say, guys, if we just change that one thing, or we do this, or I think we should do this, then we can improve. And as we know, Michelle, we've worked with people and processes. The same old problems occur over and over and over again, and can carry on for years until someone does something about it. But if you don't take action, it doesn't happen. So years ago, I was an employee in a corporate space, team leader. I don't want to make a long story, but there was a certain problem. It was a bit tricky around data management, and I came up with an idea, and I kept on saying over and over, we should do this, but no one listened to me. And then one day, a colleague of mine, it was just the start of globalization, I think it was in 1997, we were sent off to London, and we will have this big indaba about all sorts of things. And I happened to talk to someone offline. It wasn't part of the workshop, about this particular problem and my solution. And I told him about it. And about 3 months later, he visited us in South Africa, and he came up and he offered this solution. And I don't think that was nothing malicious that was happening. He was just saying that. And suddenly this person from head office was so clever, and the solution got taken and implemented, and everybody was happy. And meantime, it was all my idea. And luckily I'm not someone with a big chip on my shoulder, but that happens with a lot of people. And that's why I say, listen to your people, find a way to listen to them. But just flipping the coin, I left this corporate, took a retrenchment package that was just around 2,000, did some other project. I was away for a couple of months, and then they called me and they said, would you want to come back, fill in? We've got a big project, come in and come and fill in for another manager. And suddenly I noticed, when I offer a solution, people listened, and they stood up and they said, yes, let's do that. And that was because now suddenly MJ was the consultant. So not reflecting badly on us, because we're all consultants now. But don't just listen to your consultants, listen to your employees. I'm going to stop there.
Thank you, MJ. That's a true story and a great story. Good question from Juliana. Is the RACI matrix appropriate for information management, aka procedures, communications, changes, or competence management?
I would say definitely. Maybe not so much for competence management. I assume by competence you're saying what somebody's ability around a specific process is, a skill set, and how good I am at doing it. So definitely RACI for process, procedures, for communications. If you take changes as a project to make a change happen, definitely RACI is necessary. And then the link that I'd make in terms of competence is in the process, knowing who the expert is helps me develop the RACI matrix. So I wouldn't say that there's a RACI matrix of competence, but competence management informs the RACI matrix. So you're not going to say on management reporting, sorry, that's just stuck in my head now. On management reporting, Vincent is an expert level competence responsible person, and Andrew is an expert level accountable person. I think that's taking it a bit too far, but you could definitely say, because Andrew is the expert, he's consulted, he's the C of the RACI. Because Michelle is the CEO, she's the accountable person, and finances, I'll say I'm the accountant, so responsibility is mine, and MJ is our board chairman, so she needs to be informed. So there you got your RACI. But Andrew, because of his competence as an expert, is consulted.
But let's ask Andrew. I gave you now my informal view, value your people, listen to them. How do you actually formally get a good continuous improvement program running in your company?
Thanks, MJ. So, I mean, just a bit of background about me. I spent years fighting that famous annual performance review. There were times where, for me, it was a disaster. Think, oh wow, I just spent 9 months doing so much work, and I just had a review that just talked about the last 3 months that just came through. And a lot of times it doesn't align to what your real contribution is, and that's when things start to click with me that there is a big gap out there in organizational management and in leadership management, and that gap is aligning decision makers, aligning team leaders to the actual competency levels and the skill gaps of their staff to get people up to that next level and to inspire people to go to their next level, whether it's up or sideways. And if you don't mind, I'm going to share another slide. So, and one of the big things that we're doing now is making sure, going back to the roles and responsibilities, is aligning those roles with the supply and demand of your organization. Supply meaning the people, and of course the demand meaning what's coming in from the client, what's coming in from the stakeholders. So this is the opportunity to realign your company with what with the lifeblood of your value chain. And at this point in time, this is where you get learning and development, you get human resources extra excited to start really aligning themselves to process management, to operational management through enhanced job descriptions and expectational management, and finally workload profiling. As you can see here, it's important that that I could go into a system, especially if I'm a team leader, and taking a look at Max, understanding what he's good at, but also where he's been, what he knows, what skill sets he's had, what type of roles he's carried out, and what feedback he's got. So what I'll show you now, when I was working as head of continuous improvement in State Street in Italy, I did this directly with the head of human resources. So, this was the first time I started to work in the area of continuous improvement. Before that, I was always in the Lean Six Sigma realm, aligning process improvement opportunities to processes. But when I was tasked with bring continuous improvement to the company, the first thing that came to me, well, you know what, it's all, as MJ said, it's all about the people. So how do we align people with process? And here's where we leveraged, and I did this together with the head of human resources to start, and then we implemented this in business operations. We leveraged the famous Lean Six Sigma skills matrix, which I think some of you would probably be familiar with. It's also called the competency wheel. I'm not sure if Lean Six Sigma actually invented this or if it's just another flavor of something that was always being done in the past, but Toyota in the 80s became a famous user of this. And the one thing you can do very easy is attach a process to a 4 steps to excellence journey that each process owner is going to go through. So you can see here we have Dennis Pagliaccio, order dispatcher. And what does he do? Well, to do order dispatching, we need him to become an expert by following these 5 steps. As you see on the left, does he understand the order? If he does, he's at level 1. Does he know the difference between options the options available to the customer, he becomes at level 2. Can he successfully identify the correct delivery option for the customer? He becomes to level 3. And then if you trust Dennis to actually identify and resolve customer issues together with the client, you can trust him to be a client-facing partner, employee, then he's officially your expert. He's a person that you can trust to go throughout the company and help people with order dispatching. And at this point, when the first time I launched this, did it manually, but then of course we brought it into the Presto world. The head of human resources, head of learning and development, the first launch was actually in a tax accounting group. And the responses were immediate. It was, I never knew anything to this level about tax accounting. Now I have a really good understanding, process by process, person by person, where the skill gaps are in this company. And it helps the people management teams in the company realign their recruitment process and their knowledge retention process to be more catered to the actual value chain of the company. So you can see here, we got a nice view of a whole team. This is a sales team doing product pitches. These are the sub-processes of doing product pitches. Put yourself in the shoes of the sales team leader. Imagine if you're there first day on the job from another company. Looking at this, you immediately know who to go to, who's the expert, who's having difficulty, and who can help that person having difficulty. And this is the skills matrix in action. Our most recent user of this is a ice cream company in South Italy, or so I say frozen food company in South Italy. They just opened a third plant. They have about 120 or 130 line workers that need to move from plant to plant based on client orders. So when one of the supermarket chains, who's their client, says, I need 200 kilos of chocolate ice cream for July, they can immediately go and find who are the people in this company that know how to make chocolate ice cream and send them to the right plant for the month of July to fulfill that order. And it's been an amazing experience, just starting with the screen, what you see on the screen, a procedure similar to this, and they're using the exact same logic. A couple other things I would highlight, not just at the process level, but also at the actual transversal skill level. Transversal skills are skills that you use throughout the company. So I'm an expert at making chocolate ice cream, but next week I might be making
vanilla.
Yeah, go ahead.
Michelle saying vanilla ice cream.
Okay. And at that point in time, we're talking about processes, here we're talking about competencies, but of course there are transversal skills that are valuable in many parts of the organizations. And here's probably the most universal transversal skill most companies are managing. We're talking about skills in Microsoft. So who knows how to use PowerPoint, who knows how to use Word, and what level they're at. And this is a second dimension of our software, Presto Continuous Improvement. You can immediately see who are Access database experts. And you can use the simple 4-step to excellence logic that you see in the bottom left, instead of making it detailed like that first competency I showed. Who has basic knowledge, who can practice with help, who can perform alone, and who's in a position to train others. Very useful, very easy to manage.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm going to interrupt you there because Andre has a question which I had right in the beginning is, how does one implement it in a relatively small business from a cost perspective, but more so in terms of having highly technical software and a computer-shy team? So I see MJ has invited you to a demo because that was basically MJ's challenge in our business. We're too busy to do things and to get into the system. So Andre, it obviously it doesn't just float into your business. It needs a mindset, and it needs the decision that this is the way that things are going to happen. And it ties in very deeply with what's in it for me. Why should I change? Why would I make this difference happen? And essentially, it does, as Andrew just explained, transfer that knowledge from, if more people know what I do, maybe we can do it better. That's one of the what's in it for me. So MJ, do you have a comment around that?
No, I don't have a further comment, but I'm keen to get to the really continuous improvement. How do you identify where can I improve in my company? And get into that. But Vincent has got his hands up. And
And I've got my hands up. Yeah, I just also wanted to mention to Andre, you don't have to onboard the whole company into a software system. Remember that you can appoint champions, and they manage the system on behalf of others. So there are ways, but it also comes down to that culture, that people and change management of people. So maybe pilot it with one team and show the success, and other teams will want to participate.
I'm
Thanks.
still having to remind Vincent and Michelle to log in every day. So Andre, it takes some bullying as well. But once you're in it, it works beautifully.
Anna makes a point here that there's another technique called the learning curve, which is a very useful tool to measure skills levels of employees and use it to evaluate performance. Do you know of that, Andrew?
No, I don't, but I wrote it down. I'm looking forward to doing some research on this one.
Well, it's essentially, in my view, it's basically the competency wheel breaks the learning curve into quartiles. So if you look at the learning curve, basically showing that there's efficiency over time until you get to 80% efficiency at a certain point in time, there becomes marginal benefits of further learning. I think Anwar's got his hand up.
Anwar, you want to make a quick comment?
Yes. So what I want to say is that the learning technique is a very, in fact, it is a documented technique where skill levels of people who are doing repetitive work, like, is measured, and then it uses the statistical Z criteria to define the learning curve, and then use that to evaluate different employees. For example, like, if, as we all know, that when you start doing work repetitively, we'll try to learn. And then suppose you are doing a job which takes about 10 minutes. And then at the Z level of 10 minutes, you have determined 80% of efficiency. And then using the same thing again and again, you will see an improvement in your time. And then you define that now your learning curve is 85%. When this technique is used to a group of employees, then you'll be able to know that which employees can operate at 85%, and then which employees still cannot do that. So when it comes to evaluation of performance, generally we find all the evaluations are very subjective. By using the learning technique, we can prove to the employees themselves, see, this is what your performance was, so that they realize that yes, there's a deficiency, why the other person was evaluated better or got a better score than them against that. When you show them that this was your learning curve as against somebody who was rated higher, and that this removes the disparity which generally managers face when they evaluate the performance. Thanks,
Anwar. We're going to need to move on. This is quite a deep dive into the learning curve, but you've made us aware of this, and this is great for us to research. Thanks. And I'd love to continue the conversation because it sounds like you've done quite a scientific application of this.
Yeah, thanks. I think so. Michelle, MJ said she'd like to also see how we can actually elevate the things in the business that are going to result in continuous improvement happening. So maybe
go ahead with that, MJ, and then we've got one more item to discuss, which is the cost and benefits of implementing continuous improvement.
Yeah, so let me ask Andrew. You know, so we say, or I say, let your employees, let them speak up. Now everybody comes with a flood of ideas, and how do you record what people say, are improvements or things that they want to fix or innovation. And then if you, out of these hundreds or maybe thousands of ideas, which one do you pick? What's the best way to go about this?
Thanks, MJ. So a famous saying, the best way to innovate is to have a lot of ideas. So I'm going to actually share one of my favorite slides again. Going back to the way my team operates, shouldn't be a surprise that we're speaking about visibility and transparency. There's our friend Tachiono telling us that having no problems is the biggest problem of all. And of course, to get around that, we're speaking about communication. We're speaking about dashboards that give you that visibility into the opportunities to make your company better. And here we have our famous waste management dashboard, speaking about process waste, but process waste, another way to say it is improvement ideas. These are all opportunities that your process experts have came up with because you've given them the mandate to say it's your responsibility to identify defects. It's your responsibility to identify where things are being overproduced. It's your responsibility to identify where role and responsibility misalignment exists. As they're coming up with these opportunities, these are ideas on your dashboard. As you can see on the back part of the picture, and on the front part of the picture, you actually have your report coming directly from your process owners saying, this is my process, this is the description of my waste, this is the description of my opportunity to remove that waste. That's your ideas. Taking it to the next level, you have them then brainstorming and saying, these are the benefits we're going to get back. Which ideas are going to give us high client service benefits? Which ideas are going to make us more accurate? Which ideas are going to reduce risk? Which ideas are going to save us time or give us a competitive advantage? There's our friend Alvis again, coming up with 104 waste reduction opportunities across a small portfolio of processes. But most importantly, in the real eureka moment is when you see a group that's been working on the same processes for 1, 2, 3 years, seeing their process portfolio under a different light as they now have the opportunity to raise their hand, capture and communicate to their leadership team where they can give the benefits to their process by making it better. And this is true innovation. This is true continuous improvement.
Thanks, Andrew. So I think we'll wrap up now with just positioning that what we spoke about today is specifically around managing the people or the talent in your business as a part of continuous improvement. There is a range of elements of what you just basically highlighted, which is what waste management and managing waste out of processes. And Moira's just posted a link for that session. It's in November. We'll be hosting that. So feel free to register for that. And I'd like to, in the next 2 minutes, for us just to wrap up by saying what are the costs and the benefits of implementing continuous improvement, specifically as it relates to this forgetting curve. MJ, can we start with you?
Michelle, I think you've seen what Andrew just showed is you have to identify what the cost, if it's a fault, it's an error or a waste, then you have to identify what it's costing you at the moment, and then obviously if you're going to fix that, that's going to be your saving. If it's an innovation, you have to identify that. I don't think one can just say there is a cost and there's a benefit. You have to look at it because it can be tangible or it can be intangible. But Andrew's system has got a great way to identify and not without going into deep calculations and Excel spreadsheets. It's maybe a subjective field to say, well, I think, we talk about order of magnitude. It's going to save us 3 days in a month, or it's going to save us X amount of rands, and have it in orders of magnitude, and then look at your opportunities and implement that.
Thanks. Vincent, comments on that?
Yeah, I think continuous improvement is going to save you time, money, and generate additional revenue opportunities. No question, it will do that. The question comes in, what do I have to spend to achieve those things? And that is going to be case by case. but you will not have a better, more efficient business if you embark on a continuous improvement journey. That is the whole point of it. So do it properly, start with process, and you will see value out of it.
I want to add to that. Sorry, Andrew. My add to that is I posted it. There was a big story this week about banks that were reprimanded or asked to pay back rent interest that was overcharged, and it's reputational as well. So continuous improvement links to reputational risk too, because those processes were not in place to make sure that that slip up didn't happen. So that is a big benefit, is if you continuously look at how to improve your processes. Andrew, last word to you.
Yeah, just to add to Vincent's start with your processes, I would add to that, start from the top down. We've been doing this now for 6 years from a CI implementation perspective, and there's been some bad situations. And these are situations, they all have one common thing in place, is that you don't have the top of the company completely supporting it. They look at it as a nice to have. And that's why one of the first things we do now when we engage new clients is say, make sure the CEO, if that's what it takes of the company, says you're doing this project, you're getting paid for this project, and you're actually going to be reviewed on how well you participated. When you put that in the annual goals of the people and they see the CEO cares about this, the cultural change.
It comes from the top. Absolutely. Yes, indeed. On the hour, thank you so much, everyone. We'll be sending a recording of this and with some further information. So thank you for joining us and see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.